Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is Alma, and I'm here today to talk to you about some series books that I'm going to be reading this year. These are books that I've started this past year, and there's other ones that are brand new to me that I just purchased some books and I want to start them. So I'm just going to go through the books. I have quite a few here in my cart over to the side that I'm going to be sharing with you all, and we'll just go from there. So the first one is that I'm going to talk about is I read the first book this year. It's called Fairest of Heart by Karen Whitmore, and this is a fairy tale retelling series that is kind of interesting because was the story of Snow White, but it was retold in a Western um, with a Western feel. And so, and like instead of her being like a princess, she's a young woman living out in the West. And then like instead of the seven dwarf or the dwarves, there's old ranchers, that kind of thing. So it's a Western retelling of Snow White. And I really enjoyed this book. It's one of my favorites of the year. And then I found out this was actually going to be a series that the author was going to do. And so I want to continue that series, and I'll put that up there for you to see that the book is called If the Boot Fits. And so that's one of the series I want to continue on this year. So that's that one. And then I have a series that's called The Cities of Refuge by Connellan Cosette. And I read her one of her series this year. Out of Egypt was the first one of that series, and I really enjoyed it. There were 3 books in that series. This series has 4, and these covers are beautiful. If you could see them in the just beautiful covers. So the first one is called A Light on a Hill, and then the second one is called Shelter of the Most High. Again, another beautiful cover. I tell you, when I found them, I was like, I just wanted to get them just because the covers were so pretty. The third one is called Until the Mountains Fall. And then this one is called Like Flames in the Night. And these are all biblical fiction books. The first one is the story of a woman named Mariah. And I believe, if I remember right, this kind of follows the series that I read last year. So that series ended with the children of Israel leaving the desert after wandering for 40 years. And I believe these pick up that story, and we might see some of those same characters in these books. Which I'm really looking forward to seeing those characters again. So that's this series that I really want to try to watch, or try to at least read. If I can't, I'm not sure if I'll read the whole series this year, but at least maybe the first 2 books at least, hopefully, if I get that. This is another Christian fiction series that I picked up on Pango Books. I picked up the first 2 books. I'm not quite sure if there's a third one or not. I'll have to check. But these are by Jocelyn Reed, and the first one's called Veiled in Smoke. And then the second one is called Shadows of the White City, another really beautiful set that I picked up. And this is called the Windy City Saga series. And this one is about a young woman during the Great Fire in Chicago. So that's a historical fiction, Christian fiction, and that was really a genre that I really enjoyed this past year. So looking forward to reading these 2 books. And then this next series actually has 5 books. So I don't know if I'll be able to read all of them, but I have heard that when you read these, you zip right through them because they're so exciting, and they keep um, your attention. And so the first book I'm actually reading this next month, it's called Submerged by Danny Petrie, and this is the Alaskan Courage series. So the first book is Submerged. The second book is Shattered. They're all S's. The Shattered is the second one. And then book 3 is Stranded. Book 4 is Silenced. And then the last one is called Sabotaged. Now, I purchased these all at the same time. I got them on, somebody was selling them on eBay, and I picked them up for a really good price. And then my mother-in-law, who loves this author, she just discovered her this year. And so she's already read all 5 of these books, and she said she zipped through them really quickly. So I'm hoping that I will do the same. But like I said, I'm going to read um, the first book is on my TBR. The Submerged is on my TBR for this month. Okay. These two are another Christian fiction that I picked up by Rosanna M. White. I've never read any books from her, but I picked these up at a library sale. And this is the Secrets of the Isle series. The first one is called The Nature of a Lady, another beautiful cover. And then the second one is called To Treasure an Heiress. So that's that one right there. And these books, it's another Christian fiction historical. And this book is in the time frame is 1906. And so I'm looking forward to reading these. They're both set in 1906. Okay. And I'm just going to switch my cart, flip it around here. So I've got books going back and forth on these. Sticking with Christian fiction, here's another set that I picked up on eBay because I had heard that Lynn Austin's series called Chronicles of the King series. I actually read the first book last year, and I really liked it. It's the story of Hezekiah. And so this is a biblical fiction. So it looks at the story of Hezekiah. And I really, really like the first book, talking about Hezekiah grow as a really young child, and the things that happened to him. His father was the king, and he was an evil king, and he was worshiping the false gods at the time, and sacrificing children to the gods there. It was a horrible scene, and his own brother was sacrificed, and he was almost sacrificed. So that the whole first book was about him as a child. And then so I read that one, but the rest of there's actually 5 books in that series. So the second one is called book 2 is called The Song of Redemption, continuing on in his story. This is that one. The third book is called A Strength of His Hands. Book 4 is Faith of My Fathers. And then book 5 is Among the Gods. So I've heard great things about the rest of the series. People say they really, really love it. And Lynn Austin is a well-beloved author. So the first book that I in the series was actually the first book by Lynn Austin that I've ever read, and I really, like I said, I enjoyed that. I love seeing reading biblical fiction books because, of course, it's not totally accurate because it's fiction, but it gives you kind of an idea of what it might have been back at that time. Okay, moving on. I'm going to stick with the Christian fiction. We'll just keep them all in the same place. This is um, Christian fiction, but it's like suspense. Um, and this is by Terry Blockstock. And I have read quite a few of her books this past year, so I know. So I really do enjoy her writing. And this is the what is this series called? It might be the Cape Refuge series, but the first one's called Cape Refuge, and it's a murder. The back says 2 bodies, 1 spare gun, and a murder suspect. So it's mystery. So that's the first book in the series. Book 2 is called Southern Storm. Oh, it is the Cape Refuge series. So Southern Storm. This is book 2. And then book 3 is called River's Edge. And then the last book in the series is called Breaker's Reef. So, and I got these at a library sale as well. So I lucked out that I was able to get all 4 of the books in the series. Okay. Oops, excuse me. Let's get these back in here. Let me see if I have any other Christian. Oh, yeah. I have a couple other Christian fiction books down here. So one of the series that I started last year that I only got around to reading the first book is by Dee Henderson, and this is called. It's part of the O'Malley series, and the first book was called The Negotiator, and this one is kind of a family drama story built around a family of siblings that they're not siblings by birth, but they came together after um, meeting each other at an orphanage, I believe, and they kind of adopted one another. And each book is revolves around one of the brothers or sisters. So the first book revolved around, if I can remember her, Kate, and it was a police person, and all the family, they're all like in, one brother's a fireman, or one brother is a marshal, so they're all in service jobs. One's a doctor, and she, like I said, she's a policewoman. And so this was the first book. I really enjoyed it. So that's book number 1, and I do have book number 2, so I hope to get this read. This one is called The Guardian. I don't have book 3, but I could always check, those out. Check them out at the library. The other one I have is book 5, and that's The Healer. So I'm assuming this may be about the one that is. Oh, this sister is a psychologist, and then the Guardian, he was the marshal. So, like I said, each book revolves around one of the siblings and their story. So I really enjoyed the first book. So, and this is an older series, so it is pretty dated when you read it. They talk about old. When I was reading it, they talked about what it caught my phone phone message. What are those called? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Phone messages machines that they were, listening to the messages. So I thought that. So it's very dated because it's the like in the 90s, I believe. But good, even though, and a lot of good faith elements in it too. Okay, set that down here. And then I believe this is a Christian fiction as well. I read the first book in this series. It's the Lost Castle series, and the first book was called The Lost Castle, and this one is book 2. It's called Castle on the Rise, and I actually picked this second book up at a library sale. But when I bought it, I didn't realize it was part of a series in book 2. So I checked out the first one from the library to read it, and I did enjoy that one. And so this one kind of picks up the story. The first book was it's a dual timeline revolving uh, actual place in England with this castle and the life, people that live there. Actually, it was not only dual. I think the first book was actually three timelines in that book, so it was quite a few things going on. The history of this castle. So, looking forward to reading the next book. Okay, let me see if there's any more Christian fiction on my cart before I move on to another. Oh, one more. Well, one more on my cart. I might have something else on my board over here in front of me. Okay. I picked up three of Karen Kingsbury's books, and I've never read her books before, but I've heard that they're very good. And so this is a set, and I actually have the third, the fourth, and the fifth. So I'll have to check out the first ones from the library. But this third one's called Rejoice, and this one is Return. So all the books start with R's, and then Reunion. And this is called the Baxter series. And there's quite a few of these. This series, I think, goes up to like 30 books, but these are the first ones. At least the first set. The first book in the Baxter series is called Redemption, and I'll be checking that book out. And then the first and second one, and then I've got 3, 4, and 5 to finish off that first set. And hopefully it's something that I like, and then I may continue on with that series. Okay, and then I'll talk about um, I'll talk about a sci-fi or a fantasy, Christian fantasy that I started last year, and I read the first book, Mark of the Raven by Morgan Bussey. And this book is about a a fantasy um, fantasy story about a young girl, and she has the power to enter a person's dreams. And not only can she view the dream, she can manipulate the dream. And her family line, the women in her family can do that. And the story talks about what her mother wants her to do with these dreams, um, and it's not a good thing. But so I read the first book. The second book's called Flight of the Raven, and the second one is called Cry of the Raven, or the third book's called Cry of the Raven. So I'm hoping to read those again. I don't have those books. I read those on ebooks, and then so that is called the Ravenwood Saga. Another one, fantasy, that I wanted to read it is not Christian fiction, but it is called Divine Rivals. I read the first one, and the second book just came out called Ruthless Vows, and that is a fantasy kind of historical um, love story romance, and I really enjoyed that one as well. I did have one more Christian fiction. I just saw that on my list. It's called another one from Terry Blackstock, and that is the Restoration series. And the first book is called Last Light, and I'll put that up there for you. Last Light, and I believe there's 5 in that series, but I need to finish the last one. So I read the first part, and then the last book is Dawn's Light, and that's the one I'll be reading this year to finish that one off. I really want to finish that series. That series has to do with what would happen if if one day all electricity and lights and everything went out, like nothing worked, like your car would not start, and basically nothing worked. It was really an interesting a premise, kind of scary. Like, what would you do? The beginning of the book of Last Light, this young a woman and her dad were just got off the airplane, and they were getting ready to drive home, and they were stuck there, and nothing worked, so they had to walk back home. Um, Ended up getting bicycles to ride because nothing worked. And so that series is how this particular family navigates through the world, just being turned upside down when you don't have electricity, you don't have uh, uh, telephone, nothing. It's like you're back in the Stone Age, which is crazy. But it's a really, really great series, and I'm looking forward to finishing it with that last book. Okay, so that is all of the Christian fiction books that I'm going to be series. I do have some secular. This is a YA series that my daughter thought was really a good series. I've heard some things about it, and it's by Kira Cast. And this one is called The Selection, is the first book. And I can't remember exactly what it's about. It just says on the back, for 35 girls, the selection is the chance of a lifetime. So it's almost like they're maybe competing for something. So that's the first one. The Elite is book 2. These covers are really pretty too. Then book 3 is called The One. And then this one is, I guess it's part of that series. It's the selection stories, The Prince and the Guard, maybe a little extra novella to go with that. So these look like some, would be a fun read during the year. If I can get around to reading them. So that's that one. I believe though, I don't know if I said it or I think those are a YA series. Another YA series that I want to finish is this year I read the first book. I read Twilight, and I really liked that. I've always loved the movies, and I've never read the book. So this year I finally read the first book and really enjoyed it, but I didn't get around to finishing the series, and I ended up picking all the books up. So I really need to finish that one, and so I'm hoping at least this year to read New Moon, which is the second book in the series. And if I'm doing pretty good by the end of the year, if I can squeeze in the third book, Eclipse. I have that to read. They're pretty chunky. They get chunkier, I think, as they go. So, like I said, if I at least can get New Moon in for the year, that would be really good. Okay. Moving right along. See, I did that one, did that one, did that one. So another so these next two are fantasy and sci-fi. So this one I'm going to be reading. This first book is on my TBR for this month. I really want to get this book finished. This one is the Mistborn series. It's the first book, and it's by Brandon Sanderson. And I have the first 3. I guess there's more in the series, but I just have the first 3 books. So there's this one is that book. Book 2, I believe, is The Hero of Ages. And book 3 is The Well of Ascension. And these revolve around a young girl named, I can't remember, I think it's Ven. I should remember that. But she has abilities that she's, at least in the first book, and I just started it, where she's discovering these abilities that she has. And yeah, they're chunky, but I'm really looking forward to reading them. I've heard great things about how good the stories are. Okay. And then this, I believe, is my last one on my cart. I hope I got all of them. Let me twirl it around one more time. Yep, I think so. So this last set is a Christmas gift from my son. we watched the series Silo on Apple TV, and we really enjoyed it. And so he got me the books. This is the first one in the series by Hugh Howey. It's called Wool, and it's a kind of a dystopian uh, series of future about people living in silos underground, and the premise is interesting because the people that are living there have been there, I guess, for hundreds of years, and then they don't know why they're there, who built the silos. It's all a mystery to them. And so that's the first book. And the second book is called Shift. It's the second book. And then the third one in the series is called Dust. So I'm looking forward to reading this. I love sci-fi. I love sci-fi, and so this sounds really. I mean, if it's as, I mean, they always say that you know how they always say that the books are always, or the books are always better than the movies or TV shows, and I really love the TV show. So I think this is going to be really good. Okay, well that is. Oops. Let me start over. Well, that is all the books that I think most of them, most of the series books that I'm going to be reading this year, at least continuing series or starting new series, and then hopefully, try to get just as many read as I can. And I think some will be faster reads than others. If there's any books that you've read, any of the series that you've already read, please let me know in the comments below. What were your thoughts? And maybe which one should I start first? That would be, if you have any comments on which ones I should do first, and then and I'll get those going. Again, thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video, and come back, and you have a great and blessed day. Bye-bye.